I did some research. In the history of Supreme Court nomination hearings, military tribunals have never been brought up. There was a 5-minute discussion, as you outlined, between Lindsey Graham and Brett Kavanaugh about the constitutionality of military tribunals. Yes, they've been used in our country's history. Are they constitutional? Yes. Could they be used again? Yes.
Hey friends, I just want to say it's funny that most of my videos now are being demonetized by YouTube and deemed not suitable for most advertisers, which is ironic because quality advertisers like Virtual Shield reach out to me directly because they want access to my discerning, intelligent audience. And did you guys hear this news? A Windows 10 bug let UWP apps access all files without users' consent. I'll tell you what, guys, I would recommend a high-quality VPN like Virtual Shield. This virtual private network is one of the easiest VPNs to use in the world, and it's one of the fastest, and their no-log policy protects you from any data breaches. And for those with Windows, Virtual Shield has launched their new IdentiSafe program for Windows users. This Black Friday month, Virtual Shield is offering 40% off all VPN plans and all premium add-ons, including Protection Plus, residential access, monthly maintenance, phone support, and VIP performance plans. So do yourself a favor and protect your data from the prying eyes of Big Brother and get Virtual Shield with this excellent deal all month long. I'll leave the link below this video because you do have the right to remain private. Hey friends, thanks so much for tuning in. It is wonderful to have you back. I say it every time because it's true. Without you, there would be no us. And where we go one, we go all. And I wanted to get Dr. Dave Janda back on the line. You know him very well from his YouTube channel, Operation Freedom, and from DaveJanda.com. And I called Dave Janda out specifically in a recent video for his October 16th video called Trump's 4 Triggers That Are Imploding the Deep State. And I added a 5th, which is, you guys got to remember the executive order blocking the property of persons involved in serious human rights abuses or corruption. President Trump is very much aligned against these people, the globalists like George Soros. We're going to talk about all of it right now. Dr. Janda, thanks for joining us.
Sean, thanks for having me back on SGT Report. I watch you every day. You provide incredible information that the bought-off lamestream fake media will never touch.
Oh, thanks so much. And I watch you every day, and I post many of your videos over on either thephaser.com and or sgtreport.com. And I just want to make this point, Dave. I don't know about you. Maybe you don't even try to get monetization on your videos, but I find it very interesting that YouTube allows Donald Glover's This Is America, which recreated murder and mass murder. It's suitable for premium advertisers. And on Fox TV Network, the show Lucifer, which literally depicts how the fallen one actively subverts God's laws, is suitable for premium advertisers. But my video titled, This is Exactly What Q Meant by Hell on Earth, which explains how the leftist, Marxist politicians and mainstream media subverts the laws of our nation and our Constitution, and how President Trump is aligned against their globalist Hell on Earth plans, is immediately deemed not suitable for most advertisers. I just can't figure it out, Dave. Can you?
No, I can't. And don't look at me about monetization because I applied for monetization the first week of January of 2018. And as of the beginning of November, I still have not received notification that monetization has been approved.
You know, the same thing happened to Bart Sabrell. And finally, he was told that his channel would not be eligible for monetization. So citing those 2 examples I just provided, Donald Glover recreating murder and then the mass murder of a choir, that video is not even age restricted. And so when you see that it has hundreds of millions of views, Dave, those are mostly teens and preteens watching that kind of crap. And I guess there's just no double standard on YouTube, right? I must be a conspiracy theorist.
Well, here's the thing. And here's what the globalists don't get. What you just pointed out very articulately, Sean, is about hypocrisy. Right? And the one thing that people have a threshold for, I don't care what demographic we're speaking about, is hypocrisy. They associate hypocrisy with people that are BSing them. And I believe one of the reasons why we're starting to see this shift of more folks tuning out what we call the bought-off lamestream fake media and turning to alternative sources of information, such as SGT Report or what we do with DaveJanda.com with Operation Freedom, is because people realize the hypocrisy that is being jammed at them. And so when they do these things, they think they're hurting us. They think they're hurting our platforms of trying to get out information to people. They try to, for example, in our cases, when they demonetize you or won't monetize me, they think they're trying to starve us out. But what it does do is it actually brings in more people to us because people realize of the hypocrisy that's going on. And we see this, whether it's and I think one of the big wake-up calls, I live in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor, right here, right outside that window. I mean, as we mentioned earlier, they still have impeach Bush signs up and Obama's great signs up, and they just barely started taking down the impeach Nixon signs. But even they are recognizing the hypocrisy, and it makes them question their beliefs. It makes them question, well, am I really being fed honest information from what they still feel might be mainstream media, or is it really propaganda? And this is why we see the walk away movement becoming so powerful. And this is why we see the acting out of the Hillary Clintons, the whole civility thing, the Eric Holders, when they go low, we kick them. The Cory Bookers, let's, get in their face. The Maxine Waters, follow them around and torment people. No matter who we look at, Pelosi, if we win, anybody who disagrees with us, well, that's just collateral damage. People, these are not people making statements from positions of strength. They see their power, they see their constituency base leaving. And the only way it appears they think that they can win these midterm elections and progress their agenda is by essentially threatening people, threatening people on the other side. You either agree with us or we'll beat the hell out of you, essentially. And that's not selling. It's not even selling here in the People's Republic of Ann Arbor. And if it's not selling outside that window, it sure isn't selling in Peoria or anywhere else across the country.
No, you're 100% right. And there really is a great awakening. And I was going to mention the walk away movement because people are waking up to the hypocrisy of the hardcore Marxist George Soros left. And they don't want open borders. And many of them are sensical enough to realize they don't want their Constitution and Bill of Rights dismantled. And you're right about the threats. I saw an article on Thursday in which Adam Schiff and Maxine Waters have vowed revenge and ramped up Russiagate attacks if the Democrats take the House. That's all they have left is Russiagate. I've made the point time and time again that these people are morally and intellectually bankrupt and they have nothing left to sell the American people but fear and loathing. And you know what? I'm not pro-GOP. I've really broken my false right-left paradigm. But I do see a president in the White House, thank God it's not Hillary Clinton, who is standing up against these people, and they're trying to take him down at every turn. And when I say standing up against these people, I'm saying he will actually use the N-word, nationalism. He will talk about if we don't have borders, we don't have a country. He's standing up against the George Soros, Hillary Clinton talking points. And you'll notice, by the way, that he's even gone so far as to stand up against the Fed. And boy, are they making him pay a price for speaking out against the Fed's policies with which he does not agree by slamming the stock market and reminding him who's boss.
Sean, your points are very well taken, I believe, completely on point. When I first got involved in healthcare policy, which was back in 1988, when Reagan asked me to work with C. Everett Koop, the then Surgeon General, and focus on healthcare policy, healthcare cost containment, healthcare reform to enhance availability and access to care. And one of the real frustrating things is things that we were talking about in 1988 with President Reagan now are being talked about today, 30 years later. And if we would have done if George Bush the first would have fallen through on what we had suggested to Reagan and what Reagan wanted to implement, we wouldn't be in this quagmire we are today. But one of the first things that I was taught when I went to Washington back in 88, one of Reagan's administrative assistants would talk to all of us that were coming on board to work on policy issues. And here's the talk. And this is why I think this drives the globalists nuts, because Trump has the same philosophy that Reagan did. And here's what it was in a nutshell. The right-left axis is theater. This is what we were told. 88 is theater. It's meant to drive people at each other's throats and distract them and to divide and conquer. Because the real powers, now they didn't say deep state back then. They didn't say criminal international banking syndicate, New World Order crowd. They didn't say globalists. But this is what they were talking about. They said the real powers work the up-down axis, up being freedom and down being oppression. And their goal is to strip as much freedom and liberty of folks and try to oppress as many people as possible. And one of the ways they do that is controlling this right-left axis and having people at each other's throats. So they don't realize what's really going on in the up-down axis. This is what I believe is actually driving the globalists nuts right now, is because Trump really isn't working the right-left axis. What does he focus on? Up, freedom, down, oppression. He works that axis. And the globalists can't stand that because he's working their axis. So when Trump talks about border security, what's he really talking about? The rule of law. The rule of law. And this is why what happened to Kavanaugh, and granted, I wasn't a big supporter of Kavanaugh at the beginning because I didn't like his affiliation with the globalist Bush family. I'm not a fan of the Bushes or the Clintons or the Obamas because I believe they're all bought and paid for. They're middle-level puppets, just like George Soros drives his people insane when I say this, but he is also a middle-level puppet of the globalist syndicate. And what Trump is doing is Trump is saying, look, this is about the rule of law. And that's why the Kavanaugh hearing was so important. Because I believe for Trump to nominate Kavanaugh at his discussions with him, I don't think they talked about Roe versus Wade, or I think they solely talked about the rule of law and where Kavanaugh was on that. And getting Kavanaugh on the bench, I believe, was an indication that Trump felt comfortable enough that he had a 5-4 rule of law majority on the Supreme Court. And I also believe, what we've had, 59 new federal district court judges appointed under Trump, 23 appeals court judges, now 2 Supreme Court judges. I believe that for Trump to reset the rule of law, to reset any system, whether it's the financial system or whatever it might be, I believe he felt he had to get control of the justice system because that was one of the prime targets the globalists took out decades ago. And what he needed to do was, one, make sure the sheriff bringing people in was Andy and Mayberry as opposed to some bought-off cop. And by that I mean, if we look at the Justice Department and the FBI in the past year and a half since Trump has been in office, 26 top Department of Justice and FBI officials have either fired, resigned, or under investigation. That's never happened in our country's history. I believe he brought us a sheriff, if you will, that would help bring these people into the justice system that was more honest. His second step was make sure once we bring people into the system, that the judge is honest. And I believe that's what he's done with what he's in the process of doing. And a word I hear is there's another 30 to 40 judges that they're pushing to get approved within the next month. And then remember, at that Kavanaugh confirmation hearing, you've talked about it and I've talked about it, but the bought-off, lamestream fake media won't talk about it because they're a tentacle of the globalist syndicate. And this scared the daylights out of the globalists.
The exchange between him and Lindsey Graham. I was just going to ask you about that. And your lucid analysis about the rarity of that conversation in a Supreme Court justice hearing is really, I think, unprecedented.
Isn't there also a long-settled law that it goes back to the Eisentrager case? I can't remember the name of it.
Yeah, Johnson versus Eisentrager.
Right. That American citizens who collaborate with the enemy have considered enemy combatants.
They can be. They can be. They're sometimes criminally prosecuted, sometimes treated in the military.
Well, let's talk about can be. I think
under Supreme Court precedent.
Right. There's a Supreme Court decision that said that American citizens who collaborated with Nazi saboteurs were tried by the military. Is that correct?
That is correct.
I think a couple of them were executed.
Yeah.
It is unprecedented. Sean, you're absolutely correct. I did some research. In the history of Supreme Court nomination hearings, military tribunals have never been brought up. There was a 5-minute discussion, as you outlined, between Lindsey Graham and Brett Kavanaugh about the constitutionality of military tribunals. Yes, they've been used in our country's history. Are they constitutional? Yes. Could they be used again? Yes. And you'll notice right after that happened, that was on the second day of his confirmation hearings, all of a sudden, very soon after that, all of a sudden, from people I know on Capitol Hill, that's when they first started hearing about Christine Blasey Ford. That's when they first started hearing about women troubles in his past. Not before that. It was after that. And Feinstein had that information for 6 or 7 weeks before that discussion occurred on Capitol Hill between Lindsey Graham and Kavanaugh. So the deep state is panicked that it was outlined in that confirmation hearing that, look, we have a criminal justice system, but we also have the military tribunal system. The tribunal system in the past has been used for people when it relates to treason, to sedition. And there's case law behind that, and Kavanaugh outlined that. So I believe that Trump is in the process of resetting the rule of law. That's not a right-left issue. It's an up-down issue. It's about freedom. If you don't have a justice system that's honest, that's straightforward, that there's no rule of law. And if there's no rule of law, there's no freedom. And when Trump talks about the border, they try to pin Trump as being a racist. I have yet to find a statement that he has made about this current border issue, about the caravan invasion, if you will, the caravan invasion force, that is a racially charged statement.
You know, here's why I love talking with you, Dave. My cylinders are all firing. My synapses are going so fast that I'm forgetting questions that I want to ask you because you're getting on something else right away. So I just want to say this regarding the caravan. I said in a recent video that if the witch Hillary was sitting in the White House, they would be referring to that quote unquote caravan, which Trump is right is an invasion. They would be referring to that as a humanitarian crisis, and we'd all be labeled bigots if we didn't, welcome them with open arms. And guess what? I found a clip of one of these regular CNN commentators saying exactly that, referring to this thing being a humanitarian crisis.
We should be talking about it as a humanitarian crisis. And instead, the president is choosing fear to just keep people afraid.
And our president, you're right, it's an up-down paradigm. He uses real language. It is an invasion. And I guess here's what I want to say about this president. And just getting back kind of full circle to what you were saying about military court and the rule of law and cleaning house in the judiciary across the country. This president is being embraced far and wide because people with common sense recognize that he speaks with common sense. He takes his case to the American people via Twitter. He labels CNN and others like Washington Post fake news because they are, and people can see it. It's transparent. It's not hard to figure out. You don't have to have a PhD in political science to see what's going on here. And I don't know if you saw the hospital video the other day. He went to Pittsburgh, and when he came down the elevator, some doctors and nurses were waiting.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you. Keep it up.
Thank you.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you all very much. No, thank you, sir. Great job.
Thank you, Mr. President. We love you. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks for coming.
Can I shake your hand, sir?
Thank you so much.
Thank you so much. Thank you.
Thank you, President Trump.
Thank you very much.
Thank you so much.
Thank you, darling. That's a great gesture.
Thank you, First Lady.
Thank you.
I don't care where those hands have been.
We love you.
I don't want to know. This guy just got out of look. Thank you so much. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Just got
Thank
out of
you
the
all.
operating room, right?
We did.
A couple hours ago. See, Trump shakes your hand. There's no problem. Anyway, thank you all very much.
Thank you for coming.
Thank you, darling. Good job.
Thank you.
And people were genuinely excited, and it touched me when I saw that, because I've made the point time and time and time again that we all know what we would have gotten if Hillary was in the White House. And I think those doctors and nurses recognize it too. And the media would have you think that people in Pittsburgh didn't even want him there because he's such a bigot and such a racist, and it's all his fault. It's just nonsense, and I just wanted to share that with you because I have so many things I want to talk to you about.
And that clip at the University of Pittsburgh Medical Center was indicative of what he and his wife are about. You're right. He walked out. He was walking. It was a side hallway where these people were, and you could see the Secret Service guys back, and they were back 15, 20 feet, and they cheered when he walked. "Thank you for coming, Mr. President." Right? He stopped. He turned around, and he and his wife and his family walked back. And Sean, if you watch that videotape, here's what grabbed me. He thanked those people for being there and helping others. He didn't just thank them once. He thanked them 7 or 8 times. And one of those people said, "Mr. President, can I shake your hand?" And he said, absolutely. And then he shook everybody's hand. This was not some photo op that we're used to seeing, whether it's a Bush or a Clinton or an Obama. This was genuine. This was a genuine, and this really, I think, shows what the guy is about. And I'll take you one more step on Trump. My dad built buildings in the city of Chicago. And now this is 30 years ago. And Trump obviously was much younger. He was in his early 40s back then. But my dad had some interactions with him. And I can remember when he came home from several of those meetings, and my mom would say, "Well, how did that go with Trump? Because, I think he's kind of full of himself," right? And my dad said, "He's very different in private than he is in public." He goes, he listens and he takes it all in. And he goes, "I told him some things that he specifically, I know, did not want to hear, but that he needed to know." And he goes, "You know what he did?" He goes, "He thanked me. He thanked me for telling him the truth." And he goes, and then he wanted to know my insight on this. And then he gave me some feedback on his insight. And we came to a potential solution for this. He goes, "I found him to be very truthful, very honest, not afraid of hearing a different opinion." And he goes, and here's the other thing about Trump. He surrounds himself with really good, honest people. Now, that was 30 years ago. Obviously, people can change. But I don't think he has, because if he had changed from that, you don't get to be the force that Donald Trump was in the construction industry. You don't. If you're a fraud in the construction industry, I can tell you, if you are a fraud in the construction industry, it becomes very apparent. You might be able to, kind of smoke and jive people for a couple years, but not a couple decades. Not a couple decades. So I really think that clip that you spoke about was indicative. Now, I want to go back to another thing you said about Hillary being the president and this caravan. What I believe, because Hillary is a globalist extraordinaire and a puppet of the globalist syndicate, as are the Bushes and the Obamas, as far as I'm concerned. But I believe, Sean, we maybe would first be getting a little whiff of this caravan, maybe this week, because the globalists thrive on chaos. If Hillary was in the Oval Office, I believe this caravan would have been ignored. And where it would have become apparent is right when they were on our border. There's this human rights catastrophe. We have to let everybody in, you see? And Trump, being proactive, said, wait a minute, I see who's behind this. I mean, the UN has come out and said, hey, look, we're helping fund this. We're helping support it. We know that there are 60 trucking companies from my sources that have told me that are involved in this. We know that there are porta potties and food being transported actually from the United States to the caravan. That's from my sources that I've trusted for many years that have always given me straightforward, honest information. I also have a source that's very networked into what's happening in Iran, who told me that a month ago, they presented information to the administration that starting a month and a half ago, that individuals that had been trained at camps in Iran in terrorist activities had been funneled into Guatemala, Honduras, and as far south in Ecuador in South America. And again, this is somebody that I know, I trust, and I believe their information is valid. So we have everybody wants to talk about this human rights problem, like you mentioned, the commentator on CNN. let's talk about the cause of this, right? What's the cause of these people leaving their countries? And they truly are, I agree with you, an invasion force. When was the last time you saw people pleading for asylum waving their country's flag? Honduran flags, Guatemala, oh, we want asylum, yet they're waving their own flags?
Right.
When my great-grandparents came from the Czech Republic looking for asylum because they were trying to overthrow an oppressive government, and if they didn't leave, they would have been killed, they weren't waving a Czech Republic flag. If the only flag they were waving was an American flag, please help us.
Right. I think we all understand what's going on here. And I think people even on the left, of course, not the hardcore brainwashed folks, but many people are waking up to what this is all about. And I just want to circle back, though, to the Trump conversation. I think that, I brought up the hospital video because it kind of choked me up because it helped me see him for him, right? It was one of those snippets. You're right. It wasn't a PR moment. It was real. It's the way he treats people. And there's not a barrage of Secret Service between him and the people. That's what we always saw with the Bushes and the Clintons, especially Hillary. You'd never see a real moment with her ever between her and anyone. And I think the point I want to make, and I want to ask you about this, is this idea of the white hats in the military. I believe there's something divine going on here. I truly believe that there is a miracle of some sort happened that prevented her from getting in the White House. I believe that was the globalist plan. It was the easiest thing to do. It would have been the final nails in our coffin. And anybody who says Trump is just playing his role is clearly not paying attention, because it would have been game over if that witch had been put in the White House. She would have continued to stack the deck at the State Department, the Department of Justice. All their crimes would have been covered up in perpetuity, and their crimes would have then been ramped up because they had her running cover. So the deep state can't even be called that anymore. They're no longer deep. They're no longer in the shadows. The shadow government, Mueller, Brennan, Clapper, it's all in the wide open. People can see it now. So they've had to play their cards so much so that we can see them in the wide open. And my question to you is, how did this all happen? Were there white hats in the military that came to President Trump and said, we have your back and this is our last chance to save the country?
I believe yes. I believe that there was an interview with Trump, what was it, 30 years ago, and he was on with Oprah, and she talked to him about becoming president. Would you ever consider becoming president? I believe his answer was, well, if things got bad enough, I consider it. And I think that there were, my experience, and as I mentioned, I've been doing policy consulting work, not that they listen, since 1988. The Reagan folks did, but Bush 1, no, Bush 2, no, Clinton, no, and Obama, forget about it. They just got the IRS on me for harassment-based audit because of my opposition to Obamacare. So they weren't about to ask me my potential solutions to make healthcare more available, affordable, or quality-oriented. But I believe that Trump, what he voiced in that Oprah Winfrey interview was accurate. If it got bad enough, he'd consider it. And I believe there are many patriots, and this is my experience over 30 years, there are many freedom-loving patriots that are not bought off globalists in every department of our government. FBI, Secret Service, CIA, Defense Intelligence Agency, military, the Treasury Department, every single one of them. And I believe that over time, they saw their country slipping away. And I believe there was a group of folks, specifically within the military, that said, we have a huge problem here. And the country is being given away, being slaughtered from the inside, decimated from the inside, and being given to the globalist syndicate. And we cannot let that happen. And I believe some of those individuals came to decide that Donald Trump was the guy they were going to speak to. And I believe they approached him. And I'm sure he thought, well, I got a pretty good game going now right now. I'm a billionaire. I have my own plane. I have a great family. I have my health. And I think he came to the decision that if he didn't do it, because of his name recognition, that nobody else could do it. And that's not being egotistical. I think it's being analytical. As my dad said about him 30 years ago, he was very analytical.
Right.
I think he looked at the landscape and said, well, I can do it. Let me see who else has the name recognition that I have and has the money behind me and has the military guys talking to me. And I think he came to the decision, look, there are many other things I could do, but what good am I? And what position are my kids going to be in and grandkids going to be in if this is a new world order and a one world government where these guys want to take this?
Yeah, well, look at it from the White Hat's perspective, too. Who are they going to approach to have this conversation with? Lindsey Graham? John McCain? Ron Paul would have been probably the only one they could actually talk to, or Rand Paul, but those men couldn't win the election just based on American people being so deceived. Hillary Clinton would have won. And I just wanted to ask you that because I think that what Q has described time and time again is that a Hillary presidency would have been, quote unquote, hell on earth. Mm-hmm. And these people are pure evil. And I make that point time and time and time again because I don't think that's conjecture. I don't think that that's puffery. I think it's tangible and it's quantifiable. And I point to frequently Bill Ayers and the Weather Underground. These are high-level people, thinkers. These are intellectuals. And they were part of an organization that wanted to usurp the U.S. government at the highest levels and literally turn this republic into a communist dictatorship. And those that couldn't be re-educated to the new ways of thinking, the communist ways of thinking, would have to be exterminated. This is Stalin level hell on earth. I don't think it's conjecture or puffery to say we may have been seeing that future with Hillary Clinton in the White House. Your thoughts?
So what you just said, Sean, there are the trolls out there, the people that still buy into the globalist mindset that said that's pure conspiracy theory. This is hyperbole. I don't think it's conspiracy theory. I think it's conspiracy fact, what you just outlined. And I'll give you a personal experience with that. I mentioned it earlier in passing. Back in 2013, I had been one of the folks that had identified that there were two parts to Obamacare. The first part was hidden in the stimulus bill. That's where all the rationing boards and the enforcement boards were. And that which passed in February 2009. Amazingly, that huge piece of legislation was passed within a month of Obama taking office. And then the healthcare bill was passed a year later in 2010. But the healthcare bill just reinforced what was in the stimulus bill. And the reason why I opposed it is because when I read it, as opposed to empowering people, it empowered government bureaucrats and insurance companies that had no functional medical knowledge. And what it did is and I predicted, unfortunately, correctly, but what I predicted in 2009 is it would lead to higher costs, less availability of care, and a diminution in the quality of care. And the reason is because when you read through the stimulus bill, the portion related to healthcare, it was obvious that it was based on the most unethical and inhumane means of cutting healthcare costs, rationing by far-off government bureaucrats. Now, I went on record, and I must say I was significantly ostracized by the medical community because of my opposition. And I said, look, I want healthcare reform. I have advocated for healthcare reform since 1988. It's public record. Free market healthcare reform. Health savings accounts used to be called medical IRAs. Utilization of primary physicians and direct primary care models, have insurance companies compete rather than collude, have high risk pools for pre-existing conditions. So pre-existing conditions are a way of the past, selling insurance across state lines. Now, who opposed that? Big pharmaceutical companies, big insurance companies, and big medicine, the AMA. When I came forward, I did a little video presentation on YouTube back in 2010, and it got 2.9 million hits. The Obama administration went nuts. And what happened is I kept upping my game and trying to network this information. 2013, my family and I were hit with an IRS audit. And we pay a lot of money in taxes. We've never had an issue. We don't have any offshore investments. We invest in our kids' education. And I said to our accountants before they met with the IRS folks, I said, well, ask them why we're being investigated, why we're being audited. This is nuts. I go, and they said, well, what do you think they're going to say? I go, I think they're going to be arrogant enough and they want to send a message to me because at the time I had my radio show was started in October 2010, Operation Freedom, and my platform, DaveJanda.com. I go, I think they want to shut me up. I think they're going to tell you that it has something to do with my radio show and with my opposition to Obamacare. Dave, they're not going to say that. I go, ask them. They go in, they have their meeting. I'm in clinic. I get a call from our accountant, says, Dave, sit down. Just got out of the meeting. I go, sit down. He goes, yeah, you better sit down. You're not going to like this. And I go, okay. He goes, well, we asked them your question knowing full well they, push it off on something else. And he goes, Dave, they looked straight at us and said the reason why he's being audited is because it starts with his radio show. He goes, Dave, we got the direct impression that if you shut up about Obamacare and if you shut up about about the globalist system, we get the direct impression that this goes away right away. Well, I wasn't about to shut up. And Sean, that audit went 9 months. Now, let me tell you how we knew it was harassment based. At the time, I was giving a lot of talks around the country on healthcare policy. Here's what Obamacare is, and here's what we really need. More free market approach, empowering people, not insurance companies, not government bureaucrats. And I refused to get paid for those presentations. So the IRS says, well, Janda is going on these trips, and he didn't, because they were looking for unreported income. He didn't report income from these. And they go, no, that's because he refuses to get paid. Well, we've never heard of that. We'll check into it. They did. They came back. Okay, well, he didn't get paid. You're right. It's kind of weird, but he didn't get paid. But he put down for these deductions for airfare. And well, yeah, that's a legit deduction, the accountant said. And they agreed, actually, the IRS, because he's spending his own money. He's not reimbursed. Yeah, well, we can't approve these yet. Why not? We gave you all the receipts. Well, we want an indication that he actually spoke at all these events. What do you want? You already talked to him and confirmed he didn't get paid. Well, we want something in writing. We want a program from each one of these events over the past 3 years. Well, I save them. So we gave them the programs. And then they came back and they go, well, yeah, his name's on the program and it says what he spoke about, but we don't know if he actually spoke. We want a letter from every one of these organizations that he actually spoke. We already talked to him about him not getting paid. No, we want something in writing. Well, I saved thank you email. So we redacted the people's names and redacted their contact information, but it says where I spoke, when I spoke, what I spoke on, crowd reaction. We gave that to them, right? Sean, they come back and they go, okay, well, before we approve this, now remember, I'm practicing orthopedic surgery at the time. I have patients, I have surgeries, They come back to me and they go, well, before we can approve this, we need one other piece of information. What's that? We want a list of every person that was in the audience at every one of these events before we can give approval.
Oh, come on.
And I said, my accountant said, wait, this is unconstitutional. This is harassment. This is ridiculous. This is over the top. Why would you need people's names? First of all, he doesn't have them. Second of all, if he did, he'd never give them to you. Well, the reason why we need them is because if there was a federal employee in the crowd, it could be construed that he was trying to lobby for legislation, and lobbying expenses are not deductible.
It sounds like the same fishing expedition that resulted in Russiagate. It's just complete 100% horse.
So when people say that the globalists don't target individuals, that they don't target what people that they have called their opponents, who are just speaking facts, they really don't, they really have their head in the sand.
It's persecution.
It's
the same persecution we saw of Kavanaugh.
Right, exactly. And all you have to do is look at Hillary's comments in the past 3 weeks, right? Well, we will have civility when we get back in power. And implied that if they don't get back in power, they're going to beat the hell out of people. And look at Nancy Pelosi's comments the other day. Well, when it comes to people that don't agree with us, well, when we take power, they're just going to be, they're just politically they're expendable. They're collateral damage, I think is the exact word she used. And this is their mindset. So when folks speak about the midterm elections being important, and we hear this every time, oh, this is the most important election of our time. Well, I think 2016 actually was probably one of the most important elections of our country's history. And I think this one is too, because here's what happens. If Pelosi becomes Speaker of the House and the globalists win, they are going to, as you outlined earlier in this interview, focus on impeachment of Trump, impeachment of Kavanaugh, stopping the investigations of the Department of Justice and the FBI. They are going to undoubtedly increase taxes. They are undoubtedly going to push this Medicare for all, which, understand what that is. That's the government running all of healthcare, not just part of healthcare like they did with Obamacare and blew it up. But Medicare for all is government completely controlling healthcare. It's essentially making the country into one big VA hospital. And I've had the opportunity to take care of our veterans in VA hospitals, and it's pretty near impossible because of the system. That's a ration-based system. Our veterans, no American, should be treated the way they are treated in that healthcare delivery system. Yet, what Pelosi wants to do and what the progressives and the globalists want to do, and granted now, Sean, and you've been critical as well about this, and I give you credit on this, there are many Republicans that are globalists. A good example of that is Paul Ryan. Just because people have an R after the name doesn't mean they're not a globalist. No. And you can lump McCain in there, Romney in there, a whole group of them. Bush is in there. But the bottom line is when people are looking at these midterms, if there's somebody pushing for Medicare for all, that sounds great. But what it really means is you want to become a patient in the VA healthcare system. I have yet to meet anyone that wants to be a patient in the VA healthcare system.
Yeah, there's a push in the state that I live in for this universal health care, and the pledge of many of these candidates saying, vote for me and I will give you everything you want. And one of these think tanks is saying that if that were to happen in our state, taxes per family would go up $9,000 per year just to cover those promises. So people are starting to understand you can't get something for nothing, and big government doesn't mean you get a check and don't have to work. It means the whole country falls, the dollar implodes, and it would be the end of life as we know it. I just really wanted to make the point, though, that Q says with her in the White House, it would have been hell on earth. And I think it would have been far worse than what we've seen so far, Dave. We know about the child sex trafficking. We know about all of that stuff. That's as bad as we think it can get, right? I think it could have even gotten worse. I think we could have literally been talking about the extermination of Christians and constitutionalists at the hands of this communist beast system. It could have been far worse than any of us imagined.
I cannot disagree with you. I cannot disagree with Q on this. I believe one of the first avenues they would have gone after is our freedom of speech. I believe this in my heart and hearts. And I know the trolls out there will go crazy with this next statement. I believe, based on the experience I have had of harassment generated toward myself and my family by globalist officials, I believe that if she would have won, that this conversation we're having would never have occurred.
I agree. Everything would have been weaponized. Look, we know the mainstream Mockingbird CIA media is weaponized. It's a weaponized arm of the globalist syndicate, but everything else would have been weaponized as well. The DOJ, the FBI, the CIA continuing to run roughshod over everything. The State Department. You recall she had that 7th floor shadow government at the State Department, which Donald Trump dismantled. I'm telling you, folks, a miracle has occurred, and anybody who thinks that this president is just playing his role right along with the globalist plan is just not being intellectually honest, in my opinion. And Dave, it's just great to have you on and be able to try to break all this down. There's so much more we can talk about, so we'll have to get you on again.
Sean, I'd like to thank you for everything that you do and everything you have done and everything that you will do. You are an incredible resource for every person that's willing to open their eyes and open their ears. And what I really appreciate about what you do, Sean, is you encourage people to do research based on what you present. And I believe that's the difference between your presentation and what the globalists present. The globalists don't want people to do that. They want people to take the spoon feeding and then stay in their mindset and just take what they're feeding them and not think about an alternative means of thinking about an issue. And that's the brilliance of what you do. You present information, you base it in factual foundation, and then what you encourage people to do is do further research, to investigate further. You open people's eyes so that they then open a book or they open a website to find out more information. And that's the brilliance of what you do and how you do it.
No, well, you're very kind to say nice things about me like that, and thank you, and back at you in spades times 100, because your Operation Freedom YouTube channel is a must-subscribe channel. Guys, if you haven't done so already, please do open up your browser, go to YouTube, type in Operation Freedom, and subscribe. Dave Janda will provide you excellent analysis and information on a daily basis. And Dave, I'm not sure how you do it. I can't get up a video every day. I try every other day, but you're providing great information on a daily basis.
Well, and what we do is I do the YouTube, and then we also provide information on a daily basis at davejanda.com. We have a free side and a subscription side, 30 cents a day, $9 a month. Folks can sign up for a month. They don't like it, get rid of it. But we bring guests. We have various shows. We have an analysis show, the WTF show. We have our Insider Insight show where we bring guests, video format. And we also have our Department of Advanced Research show that focuses on the IT aspect of things happening around the world. I thank you, Sean, for all that you do. I thank you for allowing me to be with you today and speak with your audience. And again, we're there, when I retired from medicine in January 2017, I kind of put my beeper down, but I still am on call 24/7 for folks with our website, davejanda.com, and our YouTube channel. So thank you.
Oh, thank you so much. I appreciate it. And we'll get you back on again here if you're able to do so. And guys, again, just a reminder, Dave Janda is not monetized by YouTube. He's not allowed to have advertising. So if you want to support him, do jump over to davejanda.com and sign up. It'd be a great way to help support a truth teller. You got to remember, guys, Anderson Cooper gets paid $12 million a year to spew lies and globalist talking points to the American people on CNN. Wolf Blitzer gets paid $5 million a year, folks. Those of us in the mud here in the alt space of truth media really do need your support, and we thank you for it. Dave, thanks so much for your time.
Sean, I want to thank you. Although the last couple data points you just mentioned has made me a bit nauseous, but
all true.
Hearing about what Anderson Cooper's taken down, and here's the good news: they're getting paid in Federal Reserve notes. I'm not sure how much that's going to help them in the future.
Yeah, unfortunately, so are we. But you know what? The funny part about Anderson Cooper is that he probably doesn't need the $12 million a year because he's the heir to that Vanderbilt fortune.
Gloria Vanderbilt.
Yeah, a globalist, really up to his neck. Guys, that's the other part. You go down this rabbit hole, you find all of this stuff is familial. The actors, the musicians in Hollywood, all these famous people come from a lot of these deep state globalist bloodlines. It's a crazy thing once you do the research. All right, Dave, we'll part ways and we'll join up again here in a month or two, and I appreciate your time.
I appreciate your time, Sean. Take care. Thanks for everything you do.
All right, you too. God bless. And guys, thank you so much for tuning in. We very, 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 very much appreciate your support. A special thanks to our patrons over at patreon.com/SGT Report. You're making a big difference for me and my little team. And I want to thank you all for tuning in and spreading this info far and wide. For real news 24/7, visit us at sgtreport.com. God bless. Bye-bye.
They believe there's power in these rituals, and this is what we call cult level spiritual warfare. They summon demons and then they send them. Not only do they have power politically and in the media, but there is a supernatural power that they are accessing.